You're listening to the Being Stellar podcast, the podcast for modern leaders and entrepreneurs who are tired of hustle culture and ready to invite more ease and more prosperity into their lives. I'm your host, Deborah Stellingwerff, master teacher and coach, and I am obsessed with helping you avoid burnout while you create a sustainable lifestyle full of possibility and profit on your terms. On the show, you'll hear inspiring stories of possibility, and you'll get empowering strategies and insights from me to support you in creating your stellar life. Well, hello there, stellar friends, and welcome back to the Being Stellar Show. I'm excited to have you here today because I am live on location. Well, not live when you're listening to it, but I'm live on location as I'm recording this. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this where I've gone on location to meet with one of my guests, and I'm super excited about introducing you to this guest, who's someone who recently married into my family. So there's some nepotism here for sure. And I wanted to have him on the show and introduce him to you because he's being stellar in the world. He is a trailblazer in his industry, and he has started with a dream and followed that path. And one of the things I really admire about him is that he is a creative who's figured out how to make a business out of his art and his creativity, which is a big challenge for a lot of people who are creatives. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Ryan Amore.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited.
Here.
It's going to be so much fun. But yes, my name is Ryan Amore. I own Ryan Amore Inc. It's a technical development firm. And what is that? And I always get asked that question. So pretty much I specialize in the creation of technical apparel. So dresses, blazers, jackets, sportswears, whatever you think you can imagine that you buy in store, I create for companies, usually corporate companies, but we do have some design companies that are based in Europe and in France. But from that, we take and develop a lot of those clothings that you see in store. Aside from that, we do a lot of teaching, mentorships, and internships for students that want to learn and express themselves more than they don't learn in school.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which is so great. I mean, as you can hear, there's a lot of moving pieces to what Ryan is doing. And I want to start with exploring how you began in this, because, one of the things that I do in my coaching practice is help people to get into their zone of genius and spend more time there. And I have met so many people who have a degree in fashion who are not working in fashion.
Yes.
And it's pretty significant that you have followed that path and made a success of it. And so I would love for you to tell the story for not just for those who are listening who are interested in fashion, but those who are interested in anything and the journey you took to make that dream your reality. So let's just start with, how did you know fashion was a thing for you?
I didn't. When I first started, I've always been creative, and that's such like a standard thing that you hear in the industry who's fashion. They're like, oh, I've been creative since I was 10. I was drawing since I was 2, blah, blah, blah. That wasn't me. I just loved doing stuff with my hands. I really enjoyed the creation of things. I really enjoyed developing. I was a huge Lego fan growing up, so I like the visual aspect of stuff. And that's, I think, what's kickstarted it for me. But how I got into fashion was a very interesting story. I started off wanting to be an anthropologist.
Okay. So. Anthropology to fashion. I think I see a connection. Because there is this cultural influence that anthropology is a study of the of culture and that influence, right?
Exactly.
So, and fashion definitely is a influence and a representation of what's happening in culture.
Yeah, to me it was like the study of people, and the study of the person is what really interested me in anthropology. From there, I applied to U of T when I was in school to anthropology. But growing up, I've always loved illustration, and I loved home ec, which was like those courses you take in high school. And I saw an opportunity one year where I went to a show of somebody that I knew who was on Project Runway. And I just knew because he came into our class and talked to us. And I was really inspired by the fact of how creative he can be and how he has this outlet of doing what he wants and not not having any boundaries. And that really, I guess, clawed on to me of being like, ooh, that sounds really interesting. And kind of sunk my teeth into that. So as anybody probably would do, you know, I applied to multiple universities because you never know what you'll get into. And I applied to U of T for anthropology. And then I applied to Ryerson, which I believe now is Toronto Metropolitan University, with their name change to fashion design and fashion communications, because I wasn't quite sure which I wanted to get into. I got into all three. And I had to make a decision. Yeah. And then from there, it was just...
Can you tell us how you made that decision? Because one of the things that, of course, as a coach, that's what I help people with.
Yeah.
And why I love to have conversations like this on the show is because people are always wondering how to make the decision. And they're afraid to cut things off. They're afraid of the uncertainty. And it's similar for all of us, and it's also a little bit nuanced too. So for you, what was that deciding factor? How did you know?
Goodness me. Honestly, it was a struggle. Not in a struggle of sense of like, oh, I have to pick. I don't know which one I want. It was a struggle for me to internalize or externalize what I really wanted versus what people think you should go into for X amount of reasons. Like, oh, I could go into anthropology because I can get a doctorate. I can do this. I can get that. You know, but then at the same time, I was like, I can go into fashion and get a master's and get a doctorate at the same time. So it's like, there wasn't a clear one or the other. And my defining factor was taking a leap of faith in something that I was like, I'm just going to see where this could take me. Because I know I could do this one, which was anthropology. I'm like, I know I could go in, get an A, do this, blah, blah, blah. But this one, not so much. And it seemed more challenging to me. And, you know, fashion school isn't just sitting and drawing. There's so much involved into it. So I was like, well, I'm going to take a chance on myself. And that's kind of what led me into fashion design. I chose the design, not the communication. And for those who might be like, what's the difference? Design is centered around the creation of the clothing, the pattern making, the grading, all the nuances of the creation of the garment. The communications is the selling of those garments, the marketing of the garments, the magazines and the photo shoots. I was very interested in the technical stuff. And that was my decision, and my parents were very supportive of the decision.
Which is wonderful because so often our parents, in their love for us, want us to take the safe route.
And that's what anthropology would have been.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and I want to highlight for the listeners, is that you knew that was a safe route and you could do it.
Yeah.
And you decided to take a chance on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's so, so key to check in with what you want. Yeah. What's going to challenge you? What's going to give you the most opportunity for growth? It's not going to feel necessarily the safest. It's not going to feel the securest, but we're always looking for security, and security doesn't give us freedom. Like one of the things you said at first, like that the other person who was at the Project Runway came in and you're like, ooh, and I heard you there. That's like your entrepreneurial spirit woke up in that moment and said,
I think so.
Oh, freedom's nice, because anthropology
could make money off this.
Yeah.
I'm like, this could be a skill.
Yeah, there's freedom in a lot of ways. The no limits on your money, because anthropology, you get a degree in anthropology, you're probably a professor.
Probably, and you can go into like a tenure track, and there's like a lot of research you can do. But I will say, like backtracking a bit, at the time, it felt like a mistake.
Yeah.
So like going into it, I was like, oh my gosh, should I just like spend all this tuition money this year that I'm going into just on a hope that I want to be artsy and blah, 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 because the success rate in things sometimes aren't as high as we would wish.
Yeah.
But again, I was like, no, I know I'm determined, and I'm a very stubborn person. So I was like, I'm going to do it and just see where it goes.
I don't believe there's a single person who hasn't at some point thought they made a mistake when they went down a path that nobody they know has ever been on before.
Yeah.
Because our survival brain is going, what the heck are you doing?
Well, it's also like my brain at least was like, take the easy way out, take the easy way out. And it's like, not that it was like, it's such, anthropology is like extremely difficult to get into. But in my mind, that was the easier, more self-reliant way of being like, success is guaranteed here.
Because somebody else has done it. You can follow the path that someone else has already blazed. And that's what I love about what you're doing with your company and what you've done with your whole career. Is like you've gone places where nobody else is going. You're creating things that nobody else is doing. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I don't know. And this isn't to like toot my own horn.
Oh, let's toot your horn.
No, it's just like I've been told many times that what I do is I'm like a unicorn in the industry. And I've been told that a few times. And what I think that means is just what I offer to clients and what I offer as a business whole is something that people in the industry or like thereof don't do to the extent that I do it. I very focus my business through corporate partnerships. So I work extremely hard to try to get those contracts when, companies are overworked, when companies need help, when they're unsure of how to go into a new market and they need somebody to do that testing and to do all the pattern making or the grading for a whole new size run that they have never gone into, like a full size or, extended size ranges. And then the technology that I offer within my studio, it's kind of, I built it up where I have everything that I could possibly ever want is in my studio. And I think that's what really has set me apart and why people have called me the unicorn, because I don't just do one thing. Yeah. I'm not just here sketching and sewing. I outsource sewing and development, but I do all the pattern making, I do all the grading, I do all the production, I do the sketching, I do the tech packs, I do the grading for the tech packs, vendor reliance, vendor maintenance, going to vendors. So we travel to Asia or we travel to Europe and we inspect factories. And usually in the fashion industry, all that is separated into very niche markets of jobs, right? Versus I, as a company, do all of it. And that's what I think separates me from a lot of individuals who might do what I do.
Yeah. So one of the things that was a lot of technical speak.
Yes.
And the key thing I want to pull out of that is that what you've done is found a need. Found a niche and made yourself a unicorn. And we can all be unicorns, people. It's just checking what is your unique gift? And it happens to be for Ryan that you can do a few different things together. Some people, that's it. That's not their case. It's like one thing. I'm like that on my coaching business too, because I focus on balance and burnout, getting you in your zone of genius, helping with money mindset,
for sure,
creating magic in your life. And so I actually have that multi-focus, multi-passion, and I found a way to bring that all in. So there's this beautiful whole life holistic approach to my coaching clients. And you've done a version of that in the fashion industry because you have, when you're a person that is multi-passionate and multi-talented and has the ability to sit down there, and I wish we had them, the pattern make. Well, you can see the patterns behind us on the board. Like Ryan has made these and actually currently is working on his second pattern making book to help people bring back this lost art of pattern making. But if you were to do just that, the person you are, Ryan, would not be satisfied.
No.
So it's okay, ladies and gentlemen listening, that you find those, not just the thing, but sometimes it's the things that you're good at. Now, obviously, you didn't start doing all of those things at once. You started, and then you're like, I kind of want to add this in. And you've brought it in, so you've got this beautiful business that inspires you, which is why I wanted you on the show, because you're doing work that inspires you. And that is what I live for, is making sure people are doing work that inspires them so that they're inspiring other people and to do the same. And together, if we're all just doing inspiring work, we're going to change the world because people are going to be happier.
Very much so.
Right?
And one thing I've learned about myself, and this took a while, so maybe learn from me.
That's what we're here for. Thank you.
But I was stubborn in a sense of I thought I had to stay in one field. And I've been told my whole life that you have to do this or you have to do that. Growing up, when I was in high school, I just wasn't engaged enough in my classes because I was very bored. Growing up, I had ADHD, and it was something that just like, I was like, oh, this is boring to me, blah, blah, blah. And I had counselors tell me, you're not going anywhere. This is it for you. You don't have the skills or the talent. And that was kind of my driving factor of being like, well, who are you to tell me that I don't have talent? You don't know what I can do. You don't know my inner genius and what I can bring to the world. And that's what really kickstarted once I left university, working in the industry for a good amount of time. But that's what kind of kickstarted this, was not to show somebody that, see, I can do it, but more so to myself to say, I did it.
Yes.
Right.
And the important lesson here is not to let anybody else decide what you're capable of doing.
Not at all.
And we've all received those messages, and over time you have to excavate them and pull them up and say, this is not my story, this is somebody else's, and I choose not to adopt that.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm a type of person where when I have those thoughts, and let's say I had a really bad meeting with a client and it went horrible and it just didn't go well, I'm pulling that thought out and I'm just tossing it away because it has no purpose in what I do. I find it's hard sometimes to stay within, not to stay within a certain field, because people always expect you to be like, you're a fashion designer, so you should only just be sketching and doing this, right? But I'm like, no, I can do it all. And then people all of a sudden say, yeah, okay, right? And they have to see it to believe it. A lot of individuals have that very short-minded set where they're just like, no, that can't happen,
For those of you who are listening to this on wherever you listen to podcasts, and you're not watching it on YouTube, I just want to pause for a second, and I want to visualize what Ryan just did when he said he pulls the thought of his brain. He literally pinched his forehead and just gently and pulled the thought out, and has this physical action of doing that. And that's such a powerful anchor to remind yourself to pull that thought out. It's not yours. You're not going to take it on board. And that's a practice of thinking that way. That's the thought work of recognizing and filtering through what are your thoughts and what are other people's thoughts. And did you have some help getting there? Like, how did you get there to this place? Because, we haven't known each other that long. No. And I'm family dinners and your wedding last summer, and we're learning to each other better now. But there's so much I don't know about you, and that's why I'm so excited to have this conversation today.
It's been an interesting road, and I think for me it came from my experience of just working in the industry in that corporate lifestyle. I think we can all understand that corporate has a lot of wrongs, and how it's set up, the emotional toll, the stress that comes with it, the I have to do this or I'm fired type mentality, or if you're not working at 130%, you should be, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just like all that jargon. And I've been in situations within jobs, I was senior managers in some companies, I was senior pattern makers, and I was working in it for a few years here and there within these companies. And I've learned a lot of how to deal with that stress. And for me, that stress was through going through all that. And that's why I said earlier, like, maybe learn from not my mistakes, but maybe from like my journey and experience, is I needed to figure out a way to self-love myself when I hear so much negativity, knowing that negativity isn't me being bad at my job. It's just people have a tendency to externalize their own discomforts and negativity onto others when they're under stress. And that's why I did not like corporate. But that's kind of what that mentality came from, was just, it was just self-appreciation and learning to just like, you know, take that energy and that chakra and like what I'm going through and like just like take it away. Because it's like, if you're going to constantly think about it and you're going to constantly revolve around it, like, what's that going to do for you?
Yes, so good. And, you know, people come to me for all kinds of reasons in my coaching. They come to me to get balance. They come to me to get their money mindset handled. They come to grow their business and scale it. And at the heart of it all is that self-love practice.
It has to be, you know, and don't get me wrong. There's times where it's hard. Like, it's like I'm in the mud, I'm in the trenches, and I'm like, how the heck am I going to get out? Right? And it's just figuring a way to take one step at a time. And that's what got me to where I am, where it's just been one step at a time, figuring out what else I could do, what else I know I'm really good at, or, you know, leaning on skills that I knew I've had and I just haven't explored yet.
Yes.
You know, and that's kind of what Ryan Amore Inc. is about, is I offer all that to my clients and my clients love it. So
what a great lesson there is. What's the next step? Because I had a conversation with somebody this week, actually, who I asked, like, what do you want? He goes, I want to know how to get from A to B.
Yeah.
He wanted to know the full story. I'm like, seriously? In your past career, did you know the whole story that was going to bring you here? And we want it because our brains are grasping for certainty.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because your brain's job is to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And so it's going to grasp for certainty because then you're going to feel safe.
Just
exactly.
Like, it's always going to try to figure out, like, this isn't working out. How do I get this to work?
So that key is the next step. Focus on what is the next step.
Yes.
And sometimes the question is, what is the first step?
Yeah.
And
or it's like, what's not even the first step. It's like, what's the want in that first step for me? It was like, when I started my business, I didn't know I wanted to start a business. All I knew before this all happened is I'm quitting this job. I hate it. Learned a ton, but now I want to just take a break and work for myself. And then I was just doing consulting, very basic consulting. And then that grew and grew and grew. And then I was like, oh, I could actually make this into an incorporation, like an actual business, and like have people and have staff and yada, yada, yada. So like, that's kind of how I started. And it just didn't go from one, I want this. It started more, I don't want this, which led me to want this in the future.
Right. So let's sum that up, because different people have different journeys, right?
Yeah.
But the key is that it started with, I don't want this.
Yes.
And it's so much easier actually to say what we don't want
than
to say what we do want, because claiming what we do want can be very frightening, because what if you don't get to have it?
Very true. And even the don't want is frightening, because then it goes against that like norm that people put in place of, should I be doing this? Should I not be doing this? Everybody else is doing this. You should be happy. You should have, have a house by 28, 29, 30. You should have kids. You should have that. And it's just like, the should have is not necessarily the like, I want. And that's kind of how I've been living my life with my husband, and we've been kind of going through it together in the past few years of figuring out like how I could scale my business, what other things I can offer, which is those pattern books we're developing. We're developing online courses, like where people can log on and learn how to be what I do. And we'll teach them how to do it step by step through video conferences, like this. So it's like, who knows what else? But it all starts with just the idea. And that idea is...
And the willingness to explore where the idea might take you.
Yes.
But that's one of the things that I really appreciate about you so much, is that in everything you've done, it's always started with what happens if I go here?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even I'm like, I go here and I'm like, ooh, I don't really want to go there. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep going. Because there's always a part where you get into something where you hate stuff. And that's like the pinnacle of a good designer in my eyes, is when I start just designing like a dress. I'm like, love it in the beginning. Fantastic. I should hate it by the end of it, because my mind is already on something else. So it's like very much similar to those ideas of, when I come up with those ideas, I go through it and then I'm like, this is hard. This is going to be challenging. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just like keep pushing forward and just like see where this takes me, because you've already put in so much effort. Why give up on the effort? at the end of the day, it's just another asset that you've developed.
Right.
And that's kind of that's why I'm so multifaceted, because I never said no. I just kept going.
And what's, I think, so important for somebody who's considering starting their own business is that insight you just shared, that sometimes you're going to get down the path and you go, I don't know if I want this anymore.
Yeah.
And keep going, because if you make all your decisions based on how you're feeling, you will quit everything before you're finished.
Yes, and I actually have had clients who close their businesses very much because of that mindset.
Yeah.
You know, they're just like, not making money, I'm closing. And I'm like, okay, well, you're not making money. Restructure. Rethink how you're doing stuff. Offer different platforms. Offer different services. And
hire a coach. Get some help.
Like yourself. Get somebody who's like you, who can help and like bring that innerness out of them and like give them more inspiration. But it's so frequent now that people just like to give up when it gets hard. And it's just like, well, this took a lot of sweat and tears, crying and hardness. It's very difficult, but it was a journey that it's here, as you can see. Like,
it's really easy to think that it was easy for everyone else and it's only hard for us.
Yes.
I'm writing a book right now, as you know, and there are times I'm like, ugh,
I know,
this is hard. And my mind resists sitting down to write it. And every single time when I sit down to write it, I'm like, ugh. I'm connecting with my reader, who I'm thinking about and loving on them as I write it, and it feels good. But the sitting down to do it, because it's going to be hard, it's going to be uncomfortable and challenging, right? And my yoga instructor says the hardest part is getting on the mat.
Oh, yeah. Right. It's like putting yourself, because the hardest part is walking through the door and saying, okay, I made it here. Because you have 10, 20 different steps to get there. And then once you're there, you're like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought, right? And that's kind of like with my books that I'm writing, you know, I'm doing it more in the sense of how I work. I'm not looking about how other people do things, and people are always going to have a negative aspect to what you do. They're always going to have something to say. It's always going to be like, this is not good. And I'm writing this for myself and how I teach. And that's the only perspective I'm looking at it, is when I was in school, when I was in corporates, when I work with clients, what did I wish I knew? And how did I wish that information was given to me? And that's kind of like how I'm revolving these books and my business around that.
Another just golden nugget there is like, what do you wish you had known that you know now that you could share with somebody else? I mean, that's why I became a coach.
Yeah.
And because there's things when I started my first business, I'm like, I just didn't know what the heck I was doing and I had some good coaching, but I didn't have necessarily the coaching I needed. And that's on me as well. But, then I learned a lot. And I was like, I can make life easier for other people. Yeah. And I see you doing that as well with all of the things you're doing. It's like, that's what really, you know, people can go into fashion. I just want to be a fashion designer, and I want to draw things and make beautiful things. I mean, I went through the fashion designer phase. I had those little, what were they called? Fashion plates, and you could put them together and like sketch on them. And it was like, I loved that. And I loved drawing pictures and going to my grandmother, who was a wonderful seamstress. And she would make little Barbie clothes for me because I was good at designing it. But the whole pattern thing, that was too mathy for me. I wasn't actually interested. And as a matter of fact, that brings me to another point, is you are doing something which I think is super cool. And I want the audience to know this, is that Ryan has found something that you didn't invent it. You just found it again, right? Because there's a lost art of pattern making and designing. We were looking at his books just before we came on the air, and I was like, my mother and my grandmother just knew how to do this. I had no interest in learning it because I'm like, I am impatient. If I can sew, but if it's not done within 2 hours, I'm moving on from that project. Or my mom and my grandma, they would take weeks and months making a project that was so detailed and all of these things. And my grandmother could make patterns. And she didn't go to school for that. It was just a thing she knew how to do. And it's a lost art, and you're taking that opportunity to
Yes.
find a niche in the market. It was like, there's a hole here because this has been neglected.
There is. And I've always looked at it as I love the technical aspect of it. That's just how my mind works. I love techie stuff. I love like coding, computer stuff, but I really enjoy taking something it's hard. It's like it's a specific brain when you can take something 2D and make it into a 3D thing. And that's what I loved about pattern making. But again, it's not like I'm inventing pattern making, but I'm reinventing how things are done, because things change over time, right? It's just the nature of things. And I feel like that's what is being lost in the fashion industry now, is there's a lot of sameness that's being created, but the students and those inspirational individuals who want more can't go past this bar because that's all they're being taught. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. I want to like keep the bar going up and up and up.
And as a consumer who loves fashion, I guess my audience knows that about me. I love fashion, and I'm frustrated that everything's the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It's like the same size. It only goes up to like XL, and like even and the grading's horrible. They don't take into account different body shapes and sizes. You know, there's transitional clothing is what I call it, when it's not just male and female or them clothing, like everything in between. It's just like there isn't a market that allows that. And what I like about what I do is I have the skills and knowledge, and I'm always learning. I think that's one thing I want to like make clear is I'm not a master. Even a master has to learn. That's what makes them a master. That's what makes them a master, is they're still learning, and they can still be wrong. So if you've been told that, you know, I'm the one who says this is how it should be done, don't do your own thing. Like, learn how you want to learn. But back to my point, it's just like, it's sometimes just mind-boggling to think.
I want to pick up on something you said there about don't let other people tell you that you're wrong.
Yeah, no.
And it goes back to early with your counselor who said that you're wrong. You're not going to become anything. This is it for you. You have ADD, and you're just like, you can't focus. So therefore, well, actually, what we're discovering is that you're not. It's not that you couldn't focus. You're just multi-passionate, and you need to have multiple things
everywhere.
I have to have more than one thing, because if I have just one thing, I'm just like, it stifles me.
Yeah.
And so I get bored, and I like to give myself a variety of things to work on. But the key that I don't want to let slip by was like, don't let other people tell you you're wrong, and also be willing to be wrong.
Yes, be a sponge, but learn when to wring yourself. Learn when to let go of when people provide you with information or feedback. I think that's the most important lesson I've learned. Is in my early career, I was very abrasive to feedback, and I think that is just because of how I was brought up with the counselors and people telling me I can't do what I can't do. So I kind of built up this wall of like, well, whatever. I don't believe you. I learned my lesson to, even if you think they're wrong, take it, swallow it, pull it away, because it's not your problem.
And it's not about you being wrong. It's about maybe the approach you're taking or the idea not working.
Exactly.
Right?
But the unknown sometimes is what drives that passion, right? And someone telling you no might actually kickstart you to say, well, I'm going to do this anyways. And bam, you started a whole collection career. You're on Project Runway. You have a story, you have this. And it all could spark from one little comment someone told you during a meeting that, you know, that what's kind of happened with me.
I was going to say, that sounds like a true story.
It's a true story. It's just
Tell us the story.
Yeah, it's just like, it was hard. Like in high school, you go through so much, right? And you're at like such a young age.
Yeah, especially given that as a homosexual male who's dealing with
a lot of
sexual identity and internalizing wrongness.
There's a lot of energies going on of not knowing who you are. And then all of a sudden you have someone telling you something that are saying, yeah, you aren't talented. You're not good. The best you can do is a skill trade. And I turned to him and I was like, why? Because my marks aren't great? But you don't know that. It's on a piece of paper. You met with me once. How do you know that?
Yeah.
And I was just like not having that. And it just led me down a path in my early career to be very like protective, which is good, but I've learned over time that I need to soften up. And that's what, now in my 30s is I've learned to see the perspective of both sides, and see why somebody is coming at an approach that way and why I'm coming at this approach this way. And that's kind of how I've become so multifaceted, is because I just see the opportunities of both sides.
Right. And that can paralyze some people when they see there's opportunities in both sides. And so, and it's such a empowering place to be as well, to say, okay, I will take under consideration your perspective and filter it through my own lens and what matters to me, and not a place of, like you said, when you first started your career, you were very armored up.
Very
armored up.
Yeah.
Armored up, defensive, like, I'm not going to let you tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And you sound, you've done the work, that inner work of allowing yourself to soften and go, okay, well, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to take it on board.
Totally. It's finding that inner peace of being comfortable with it myself. And I think that's what's hard, is sometimes it's hard to swallow the reality. And the reality sometimes was, I was wrong.
Yeah. And
but from that, you learn. You learn through
if you're willing to.
If you are willing to.
One of the things that one of my mentors, Gay Hendricks, says, and he's got a book called The Big Leap.
Okay.
It's the reason I started my coaching practice, and it was like, we all have to do that. We all have to take that big leap, whether it's entrepreneurship or following our passion in a career. Or in a relationship. You've got to take that leap if you're going to have any kind of experience that is living, I think. And one of the things he says is that the entrepreneur's journey is a spiritual journey.
Very much so. It's a connective process with yourself, with your art, with what you do. Like me, at the simplest terms, I sell myself to clients. I sell my knowledge. I sell what my skills are to provide them with what is lacking on their end, right? But it's that, that inner kind of building blocks that have kind of gotten me to that point. And I've been told, this is oversaturated, don't go into that. This is oversaturated, don't go into that. There's no market there, don't do that. And to anybody that's listening who maybe wants to start a collection or wants to get into something, try it. Just because someone says no doesn't mean
everybody's a unicorn. Everybody's got their unique way of doing something.
You might have an idea that might kickstart something, like Knix and Spanx, like all those brands kickstarted from an idea that somebody had, and it's become this like global phenomenon, right? And it's that just because that you think that's so far-fetched, that's never going to happen to me. Like, you don't know until you try. Put the effort in. Learn from it.
Well, and I would actually say it is never going to happen to you. You're going to have to make it happen.
Oh, yes.
Right? So
it's not just going to be handed to you on a plate.
Right? It's like, Sarah Blakely was she's like, people are saying to her, this is never going to work. She's like, watch me.
Well, and I'm going to make it work. And that's exactly like my point of view was, watch me. I'm going to make it work. And I've made it work. Yeah. And it's still, there's still ups and downs. Like, it's a business. It's ebbs and flows. You go through phases of good, you go through phases of bad, and that's just a business in itself. But as a skill set minded person and as a designer and myself, I know that someone can hand me a sketch and I can make that couture gown because I've worked in Paris. I can make a wooled blazer because I've done this here. I've have my experiences that have taught me to sketch and illustrate really well, and I've built upon it. It's not like it's just overnight, right? It just takes time. It's like one step at a time. Yeah. You want to start with this idea. How do I get to this idea? And I always love having charts. I always think about what could happen, what probably will happen and what maybe not will happen. And then I usually go with what will not happen first because I want to see, like, get the hardest out of the way.
Right.
And then I start tying things together. But yeah, it's crazy.
And I think that remembering that you get to make it happen.
Yeah.
You get to design your life and your business, and you get to make it happen.
Yes.
Can we go back to something you said a few moments ago?
Yeah.
About selling yourself, because I think that's one of the things that derails many people's businesses, especially those who've studied fashion, because we've talked about this before, that who else in your graduating class is still in the fashion industry?
Like 2%.
Yeah, 2%.
Like there was, I think, when we first started in year 1, there was 145 of us in design. By year 4, there was 45. And then now, you know, on LinkedIn that I follow most of my class and I keep up with them, there was like maybe 10, 15 people. And then maybe out of those 10, 15 people, maybe 8 or 9 are doing what I'm doing for companies. But that's about it.
Right.
And it's like very small.
So, and there may be a lot of reasons for each individual.
Absolutely.
And because we're both entrepreneurs, we know it's a challenge to sell yourself. Some people are just like, I don't want to be salesy. And so
you have to be, though.
Yeah. And
it's a sales practice. Like at the end of the day, it's not like you're selling yourself in a bad way, but you have to think of yourself as a product. And that's how I look at it. I'm a product that I need to get on the shelf somewhere, and people need to want to take it off the shelf.
Yeah.
And how do I do that? I built an extremely in-depth website. I have very in-depth portal systems for my clients, the way I reach out and talk to my clients. And it's once you get there, it starts disseminating as like word of mouth. And people then start to be like, oh, ooh, ooh, ooh. And then that's kind of how the career really starts, is when you get to that level. But to get there, I had to figure out how I have to, in essence, sell my skill, and not just sell my skill, but sell me, because people are visual.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a rough thing to kind of realize, but it's like, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how can I reach this one client who might have 15 other applicants, and what could make me different from them. And in most cases, I would sew something that I know that they're having troubles with and fix it for them and show them.
Okay. So a couple of things I want to pull out there, because I teach sales. Obviously, I'm doing sales training, and I help my clients become better at sales leadership, because that's what I call it, sales leadership. But yeah, we don't want to be salesy, and what happens is people are salesy because they don't take the time to learn sales skills.
It's the skills, yeah.
Right? To learn how to visually represent yourself, how to be of service,
Yes.
how to create yourself as a product. I'm a product, and this is the benefit or results you're going to get from having this product or experiencing it, or what I like to say, service. So here's a service that I offer.
Yeah.
Do you want it or not? And it's not about you. And if we take it so personally, like, I love what you said. I'm a product I need to get on a shelf somewhere so people can see if they want it. And I love that metaphor, Ryan, because it separates what you do from you.
Well, and that's the thing. I personally am not my business. My skill is my business.
Exactly.
So it's like, at the end of the day, if someone doesn't want to come with me, I'm not going to go home and cry about it. I might be upset because I lost a $20,000 contract, but but it's again, it's just, you have to learn to understand those clients that you want to get into. And for me, it's proving what they're doing wrong and how I can fix it.
Yes.
Because for me, that's a great sales pitch. If I know this company is doing an athletic collection and they're having all these problems here, I will literally go buy a fabric similar through my vendor, make the pattern, bring it into my meeting with them, bring a fit model, and be like, so this style you've been having troubles with, this is what I fixed and how I done it. And then all of them are just like 9 times out of 10, they're like, wow. And that's my sales pitch.
Exactly. It's like, here's the results I can give you.
Yeah.
And
they're not asking for it.
Exactly. Because they don't know.
Yeah,
but they don't know. Generally, in my practice anyways, people don't know what they think they know what they're looking for. They think if they could solve the problem, they wouldn't be coming to me or
themselves.
you.
Yeah,
right?
they just don't know, or they just don't have the comfort or the time, and they rather throw money at it. And that's when I come in,
which is great.
That's
right?
my business. I'm like, woo.
Yeah. And I want to just emphasize that again. You said my business is not me; it's my skills.
It's my skills.
And whatever your business is. Yeah. It might be a product, but most of the people I work with are service-based professionals where they're providing a service. And though, while we're sitting here in Ryan's studio, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you should be. We're in this gorgeous studio. I love coming to this space. I'm looking at dresses over there. I want to try on after the show. We're sitting in this place where there is a product, and so it can be easy to forget that it is your skill. So even those of you who have product-based businesses, it's not the product. It's what you have created with the product. But given that I work mostly with service-based professionals, that's such great advice for them that it's not you. If somebody doesn't want to hire you, I like to equate it to if a waiter comes out and offers, or a server, to be gender neutral, a server comes out and says, would you like dessert after you've had the meal? And you say, no, thanks. They're not crying in the kitchen afterwards.
No.
Because they know the dessert is not them. And it's the same for you as a salesperson. And you have to be a salesperson if you're a professional. I think that's why so many people don't make it in coaching. It's a profession where a lot of people don't make it because they're not willing to grow the business of coaching. And I see the similarities in your profession,
very much so.
Right? People are not willing to.
They don't want to take the time to spend
learn
years
the
and
business
years and learn and grow and
I just
trial
want to
and
draw
error.
pictures.
Draw pictures. I just want to draw pictures.
I just want to color my fashion plates, please.
But I like to your point with the server. You also have to realize that you aren't the business, but if the product isn't selling and you aren't delivering it in a way that is marketable, you need to reevaluate that product.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, maybe you should have gotten the cake or dessert after, but maybe what they were offering just wasn't what you needed. Yeah. And that happens all the time in my business, not in the sense that I'm offering things that aren't, what I don't offer. It's just, I don't want to do kids wear. Flat out. Yeah. I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. And I have clients come and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can forward you to this fantastic person here to do it. And they're like, but why don't you want to do it? You're so good at what you do. And I'm just like, I just don't want to do it. Yeah.
And sometimes that's good enough, right? I had a conversation with somebody the other day. He goes, I have to figure out why I don't want to do that. I'm like, no, you don't.
No, I just don't want to do it.
I just don't want to. And that's okay. It goes back to what we were saying before about figure out what you want. Yeah. Sometimes you just don't want to. And you don't need to justify why you don't want to. It's good enough that you don't want to. Now, I'm not saying don't do some introspection because it might actually give you some
research, develop, have the discourse and dialogue. If you're, let's say I'm selling a dress and I sold 1,000 units and I had like 300 comments saying this is horrible, blah 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 blah. I'm not going to take it personally towards myself. Might internalize it as shit. I might have done something bad. I might have missed a step. And we kind of do a postmortem and figure out why it's doing that. You figure out the solution and that runway of what we need to do to get here to fix it. But again, it's not me personally doing that internally, being like, I can start crying and have like. Of course, it's hard to hear. Feedback is hard. People are very mean virtually.
Yes.
Typeboard heavy.
Do not be mean virtually to anybody. There's people behind this.
But my point to that is like, I am not my business. Yeah. So like, don't take it. But again, take what you can get. Like take that. Take those initiatives. If you know you can like get this client, or you have an inside view on something, don't just say I want to do it. Show them why. And that, 9 times out of 10, that's what's got me the job. Yeah. Right? Is showing them why they need me.
Getting curious and being innovative.
Yes. Yeah. Innovation is key because the world is constantly innovating. Yes. Even our industry. Like,
oh my gosh, yes.
3D is coming out. Well, 3D has come out. I've been working in Clo 3D for 6 years, and it's just starting now to become this big, massive bubble. But I already know it. I'm great at it because I use it daily for my clients. 3D printing has become huge. I've been doing that since I've started because I can do things internally here. Body scanning now is a whole new thing. I have a body scanner, so when clients come in, I can body scan them. So it's like...
That's so amazing.
There's things that are coming out now that are in the market. But again, it's like start with that innovation. Think of a skill that you know could become an asset and build off that.
Awesome. So many great insights that we've shared in this conversation. We could keep going,
yeah,
but we're gonna wrap this up, and I would love to wrap it up with you sharing your tagline: "Be the different, be the change."
Yes.
So the first time I saw it, I was like, "That is not grammatically correct."
No, it's not.
And I love that about it. So tell the story. It's like, "Be the different, be the change" is the tagline that is in Ryan's emails. It's on his website. It's in his business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, as an English teacher, I'm like, it's be the difference, be the change.
Difference.
Because it should be the difference.
But I want to be different. I don't want to be the difference as in the sense of two things being different.
Yeah.
But I want to be the different of something. So for me, it was, I am that different, which means I am that change.
Yes.
And that's kind of why I written it that way, or wrote it, or made it that way in my taglines, because it's like, I want to be the different and I am the change.
Yeah.
Which means if you want me, I will get you there in my head. And then my other tagline that I use when I talk to students is never expect, never presume, always work hard, and always stay true to who you are. Because at the end of the day, don't expect things to happen just because you think they're going to happen. It takes a lot of effort. Things aren't going to be handed to you. Work hard because, again, you know, some have that opportunity where it gets handed to them and some don't, right? Be the different and be the change. So you are innovative.
Yeah.
And
Be the one who is different.
Going. Yeah. And again, be the different.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that. Thank you. Now I want to wrap up our show with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Some things I don't know about you, so I'm about to learn some stuff.
Yeah.
But also because, you know, when I work with my clients and my audience, they come to the show because I share things about self-care and wellness, as well as business strategy and sales strategy. And so we're going to ask some rapid fire questions and give us a little bit of insight about how you just take care of yourself.
Sure.
So, but first, the very first question. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
It has nothing to do with self-care.
Okay.
And this is going to determine whether or not I'm going to sit beside you at family dinners from now on.
Okay.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Trek.
Okay.
All the way.
We just high-fived. Okay, I knew it. Okay. Favorite place to visit?
Amsterdam.
Zodiac sign?
Taurus.
Scariest thing you ever did?
Bungee jumping. It was scary.
Yeah, I bet.
It's so scary.
Non-negotiable self-care ritual?
Non-negotiable self-care ritual, bath. I need a moment to just chill out.
Yeah.
And that's that moment, because you're in the water, there's nothing else going on, and it's just me time.
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome.
Because you have to do it, and then I feel like crap if I don't use the water, because we're privileged people who can do that. So yeah, that's my non-negotiable.
Awesome. Okay, I love it. And there's just something so healing about being in water.
Yes.
The book that you were most inspired by?
The book I was most inspired by, honestly, I forget the title, but it was this book growing up that was about a duck crossing a road. And it had this underlying premise of don't follow the crowd.
Be the different.
Be the different. And again, it's so long ago, and I've always tried to remember this book title. It was Blue, if anybody out there knows it. Blue had a swan on it, and had a bunch of little mini swans, and then there's this one swan that had a hat on, and it was the different little swan that wanted to be different.
Amazing. Okay, so anybody who's listening, if you know the book Ryan's talking about,
please let me know.
Yep. we'll share how you can get in touch with them later. You can tell them on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever that what the title of that book is.
It might be young, but that has always been a book that has stayed with me. Of course, there's self-help books.
Sure.
There's like things that I love reading, but like that was one that really, as a child, kickstarted my Be the Different phase.
Such an important one. And I often phrase that question like, if you were tasked to put one book on a spaceship that was going to create a library in Mars, what would it be? And I think that's a great book to add to the collection.
I think so. It teaches a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a favorite question of mine. If you were a city, who would you be?
Ooh. What city would I be? What city would I be? Well, I wouldn't be New York. There's just too much going on there. It wouldn't be Los Angeles. Wouldn't be Chicago. I love Vancouver. And I don't just say that because I live here. I've lived in metropolitan cities my entire life, and I've traveled the world for my career. But honestly, I love South Korea. It's just beautiful. There's so much to do there. It's very travelable. I can go to Japan. I can like travel the whole East Asian province.
This is about you being the city. So
that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you ever been the
variety,
there's so much variety. There's so much stuff to do.
There's
it's either
a theme
that
here about variety in your life.
Exactly. It's either that or Amsterdam. And the reason why Amsterdam's my favorite city on the planet.
So chill.
It's awesome if anybody wants to go. The vintage shopping is pristine. I highly recommend. But those, honestly, it would be those two. It's hard to choose.
Nice.
Yeah, because I've been to both for a while.
Yeah, cool. All right, something you haven't done yet that's on your dream list.
Something I haven't done yet that's on my dream list.
Could be in your business, this could be in your life.
I want to do New York Fashion Week. It's something that, I make collections. I have beautiful garments and dresses. I'm a fantastic pattern maker. I love sculpting and all that kind of stuff. But I've never actually gone forward with showing at New York Fashion Week. And I think that would be my game changer in my career, is being able to show what I can do and how good I can do it, and people latching onto that in a different segment or division of my company is creating collections and selling them.
Nice.
Who knows?
I will schlep your bags for you when you do that. All right. You know that I called my coaching practice when I first started, it was called the Stellar Life Project. And I recently changed the podcast title to Being Stellar because I wanted to shift from the doing to the being.
Yeah.
And Stellar Life Project is still a signature program for me. But if you were to title your life by the name of a project, what would the project be?
Like a project title?
Yeah, like a project title, like the Stellar Life Project. It's like
The One That Got Away.
the one that got away project?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Because it's like, I'm not like anybody else, and I'm the one that got away from being in the norm. Like, I don't want to sit in an office 9 to 5.
Like Project Getaway instead of Project Runway.
Getaway, yeah. Project Getaway. It's just like, I just don't want to be like anybody else.
Yeah. And I so love the way you play with words.
Yes.
Because that's...
Again, that's probably my ADHD, but love it.
Or it's magic.
Or it's magic, yeah.
Okay. So, final question.
Okay.
Success leaves clues.
Yeah.
You've given us so many clues throughout this conversation today, but what's one final clue or tip that you want to share with others so they can have a stellar life?
I would say keep trying and being innovative. And I say that in the sense of, if you want to sketch, like, I don't know who's listening who wants to be a designer. And let's say that's your dream goal. Or maybe you want to start a company and that's your dream goal. Who wants to sell, I don't know, like really, really cute flowers. Like, just because someone said, you can't do it, innovate. Come up with something new. Just because there's one dress out there that you want to make that you can't make, re-envision it. How would you do it? Same with the business, because that's how I've built my company is through innovation and realization, because people sometimes don't realize.
Yeah, there's the key, right? There's that link. There's from thinking about it. Innovation is a lot of thinking, and then there's the realization of
To the perspective
towards
of
action.
how you, towards the action
Yeah.
of how to do it.
Yes.
And then trusting the process of making the how.
Yeah. Take those ideas and lean towards action.
Yes.
So that
always.
you can realize
Yes.
your dream, and other people will be benefited by what you create in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Ryan, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. It was super fun, and I'm going to poke around the studio for a little bit here after we sign off. But how can people get in touch with you? So, and just so you know, when you're listening, we won't name names, but if you live in Vancouver and you shop at some of the iconic brands of Vancouver, guarantee that you've been touched by Ryan's work, or you actually may be wearing some of Ryan's work.
Probably.
Especially if you're a woman of a certain demographic that's a really popular store.
Yeah, very
but,
popular.
But if they want to know more about working with you, maybe they want to have a dress designed, maybe they want to just learn more about you, maybe they want to hire you for their company because they have a vision of clothing line, or they want to know how to get into the fashion industry and maybe
coaching
learn
and,
from you and your teaching and take courses that you teach. How can they find you?
So, really simple. It's just RyanAmoreInc.com. So RyanAmoreinc.com, and there's a little contact sheet at the end that you can fill out, and it's quite in depth, so you can put in as much information as you desire, and then on that same sheet has our office phone number, and that's pretty much how to get in touch with us. Or if you want, it's just studio@RyanAmoreDesign.com.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It was so great. I loved it.
Yeah, me too. Bye, everyone. See you soon. Bye.